This person is making me so mad. What they say and what they do is just totally out of line. It frustrates me to absolutely no end, and it's so incredibly unfair, particularly the way that they treat me. I cannot possibly conceive of how somebody could be like that. I could never be like that. Ever. Ever. It is not possible. And it is against the standard of people to be the way that this person is. Can't they just be different? No, they cannot be. That's how we view people a lot of the time. There's a standard that we have for people and how we think that they are supposed to be. And the thing is, people don't actually need to follow that standard. It's not a universal standard. And to some extent, we know this about that standard that we set for people. And yet we still get so incredibly frustrated when that arbitrary standard isn't upheld. Pretty much the basis of all anger that we feel toward people is just because they did not follow the rules that we set, oftentimes just in our own head without even explaining those rules to them in the first place. But even if we did explain them, if any random person on the street came up to me and said some rules that they had for my life, oh, okay, well, I'm going to apply that exactly zero to how I act the rest of the day. We can fool ourselves into thinking that this rule set is bigger than us. It's universal. That's just basic right and wrong of how people should be. Obviously. It's easy to convince ourselves that. But it's not true. And this rule set that we've made is almost always going through the lens of the small self, of the ego, of me. The world must behave in a way that appeases me. And when we're getting fiery angry about the way that somebody is, that actually is a direct compass to a very self-centered way that we are acting and thinking. Because here's the thing. Think of somebody in your personal life that really, really frustrates you. That you think, I cannot possibly fathom how they could be this way, and that brings up some anger inside of you. Well, if we took that bare bones description of who they are and what they act like, and we said, hey, there's this person thousands of miles away from here that you're probably never going to meet in your entire life, never going to interact with you. They have all of these traits. You might hear the description of this person and think that doesn't sound like a pleasant person. Maybe it might annoy you a little bit, but it's not going to bring up that ridiculous amount of anger inside of you. Because it doesn't personally affect you for them to be the way that they are. For me, that's kind of the ultimate sign of how self-centered I'm being when I'm saying that these people in my day-to-day should be different. Because if those people never met me, what the heck do I care if they treat people what I view as poorly or have bad habits or this or that thing? The truth is, everybody can only be exactly the way that they are right now. They cannot be any other way. Again, some part of us already knows this. But are we able to still be in touch with that truth when we're dealing with people that are being difficult with us? I know I have that capability sometimes, and a lot of the time I don't. A lot of the time I get swept away in this rule set of how people must be. When my small self, when my ego is being triggered by some perceived mistreatment. Now, I've mostly been talking about interpersonal relationships, people that we'll actually bump into, but, it's just as easy to do that with people on the screens. People in media, celebrities, maybe people in some particularly high political positions, and maybe somewhat for good reason. We look at these people and be like, how can people exist like that in the world? Or we don't just ask the question, we say there shouldn't be people like that in the world. But the truth is, there should be, because there are people like that. And we all kind of know this a little bit. I mean, like if somebody's behaving in a way that I don't care for, but then somebody tells me, oh, just so you know, they have this medically diagnosed affliction that inhibits rational thought processes in some ways. I'll be like, oh, okay. I may still not love the way that they're acting, but I understand it a little bit better. And I understand their inability to act differently in certain circumstances, so I give them maybe just a little bit more of a pass. But I only did that because I learned more about them. I developed a stronger understanding of them. It's harder to do that with somebody that you don't bother to learn anything about, and that maybe doesn't have, one of those diagnoses, but maybe went through some awful trauma when they were growing up. Maybe do have some sort of disposition toward being a way that I find unfavorable. Maybe haven't had certain experiences that I've had that have expanded my worldview, so they're small-minded through absolutely no control of their own. Those are all afflictions just the same, that they did not choose, and that fate just sort of determined for them. This doesn't mean that I walk around giving a great big thumbs up to everybody acting like a jerk in my day-to-day. But it does reduce greatly a lot of the demonizing. And more importantly, once again, the insistence that they should be different. Because in this moment, they can't be. Everything is exactly the way that it must be at any given time. Now, obviously, I'm going to say I think it's great for everybody, no matter how developed you are, to keep working on improving yourself. And I hope that we can get more and more people to do that, that maybe aren't doing that right now. Myself included in whatever ways I'm not adequately working toward bettering myself. But that still doesn't change that at this moment, it's all just the way that it's supposed to be. In ways that may dissatisfy me, but in ways that it just must be. Including my dissatisfaction with that is exactly the way that it's supposed to be right now. And that's the big final point about all this, is that comes right back to the classic case of the judgments that you give to others. You're gonna come back to bite you when you find yourself in a similar position of being less than ideal. In the same way that can't these other people just be different? No. And in times when I frustrate myself through some bad habits or poor communication or whatnot, Joe, can't you just be different? No, I cannot. I can just be aware of the way that I am now and set the intention of doing better as I progress. And that has given me a lot more self-compassion. And it's only because of the compassion that I didn't want to extend to someone else, but that I have absolutely forced myself to. Yeah, I'm just the way that I am right now, not being able to think of a good final note to end this video on.